Hello and welcome to the Stack Magazine's podcast. My name is Stephen Watson and I run Stack, the magazine club that delivers a different independent publication to your door every month. If you heard the last episode of the podcast, you'll know that I was at IndieCon at the start of September. And while that episode gave a quick overview of several different magazines, in this one I want to take the time to understand just one of the publications I came across. Réiltín Aodhagáin and Lilou Angelrath are the editors of Mnemotope, a literary and arts magazine that takes a radically open approach to publishing, and in doing so upends a lot of the things that I take for granted about the idea of making a print magazine. It's a small and pretty unassuming magazine, but it contains a huge amount of depth, so I'm really pleased that they're here to speak about it. Réiltín and Lilou, thanks very much for making time to talk.
Thank you for having us. This is great intro also.
Thank you. You just saw me stumbling all over it. So everybody else thinks I just do it fine the first time. All right. So I put this on our Instagram the other day. And in like the little caption thing, I basically described it as a literary magazine that's tired of traditional literature, which seems like kind of a basic explanation, but there's much more in there. So maybe one of you could just start by explaining, like, what is this thing? What's the idea behind it?
Yeah, I mean, we basically started it 2 years ago, almost in 2023, and we did start it because we were both working in independent publishing a little bit beforehand, and we were just like, there's this niche in the independent publishing world that can be a little bit like, it's easy to get published in that niche, but if you're outside of that niche, it becomes really hard to be published. And people that are outside of just any sort of publishing, it becomes really hard to have your story be published or be heard. And so I really started from this idea of just like, it was mostly being around dinner tables with our friends and hearing the most wonderful stories and having all these people have like these, magnificent like stories, I'm going to say it again, that just never had, that can never really reach larger than that, basically. And so we really wanted to open up a world for all of these stories to be able to exist and to have like it be as accessible as possible. Like, you don't need to know anything about the world of publishing to be published in Mnemotope.
Our goal in Mnemotope is to create just a wide and welcoming platform for all of those brilliant stories that often get overlooked by the traditional publishing world. And so we do that through a really, really open call for each issue of Mnemotope. There's no theme, there's no restrictions on grammar or form. And so it ends up being this incredibly varied kind of snapshot of a really very wide-reaching community and the stories they have to share. By now we've had this like, how many people? Almost 600? No, over 300 people now.
No, 300 people, yeah, from like more than like 23 countries it is at this point, in like 4 continents. So it's like really, really broad, and also like a really broad age range as well. Like it starts like people in their early 20s to like mid 60s. So it's really nice. Like it's a really big pool of different peoples and stories. So it's like, which also brings to like, that diversity of just voices. And take a shot every time I say story.
It's fine. We're talking about stories. We should just use the word stories.
Yeah.
All right. So there's loads of stuff that I want to pick up and talk to you about with that. But like when I was kind of like peeling back the layers on this thing, like reading on my own, it struck me that the name is important. So maybe like, can either of you explain like what is Mnemotope?
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit in a two-parter. I can start with Bog Bodies Press, because Mnemotope came from the name of our publishing house, Bog Bodies Press, which we named, well, first of all, the press is Irish. I'm not Irish, but Réiltín is, obviously. And we were really inspired, I guess, in the ways that in which the bog conserves things, like everything that we know from like the Neolithic era from Ireland, but not just Ireland, like a lot of different parts of Northern Europe is all from the bog, and all the things that were preserved in the bog were not really things that were meant to be preserved at the time. Like it was all like a bit of the things that were outskirts of society that just happened to fall in there. And the bodies in there were also not the bodies of like the kings or the queens. It was like the outcasts of society and such. And Mnemotope is actually a term related to the bog as well. I'm like, Réiltín, do you want to go? It's also very strange for us to be on different computers because we do everything side by side usually. And so this is very funny. We're just like, oh my, Réiltín's actually just 2 rooms away from me, but it's just like, whoa, this is really far.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Mnemotope is an archaeological term, and it's basically an object that holds multiple timelines and cultural memories in one. So it's used a lot, for example, with dog bodies, because when you see one in a museum, you think of the time when the person was alive. You think of maybe how they died when they fell into the bog, the amount of time they spent there, the excavation, and then also you being there in the museum seeing it. And since Mnemotope is such a wide-ranging collection of stories from really all over the world and from lots of different time periods, things written specifically for the magazine, but also things someone wrote 10 years ago and is just finding a place for. It has a similar feeling of this kind of collision of stories and of memories.
Yes. And I guess also important that, as you say, Lilou, like, this isn't kind of the kings and queens and important people who have been recorded here. This is just kind of anyone with a story.
Exactly, yeah. Everything fit nicely with what, at least like the way that we wanted to approach publishing when we started the press, at least. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I'm interested in this process. So you talk about it as being a really open call. I mean, how open are we talking? Like, will you publish anything, or are you sort of like putting some kind of barriers in the way?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one is no hate speech. We don't take anything that would be like hurtful or harmful to our community, essentially. But other than that, there's no hard and fast rules. We do have an editorial process because now we're getting like hundreds and hundreds of submissions every time, which is crazy. But we have to have some kind of editorial process now. And so we have a couple of pillars that we use. We want to incorporate as many different themes as possible, so we try and have a really broad range. We also focus on people who maybe haven't been published with us before. We try to include them as well. And then we also have this process where we pair pieces up. So also you might see when you're reading through the magazine that pieces on spreads have something in common, maybe not thematically, maybe it's formally or in terms of the way that they feel. And so often what we find is that a piece that we put in kind of brings a piece that we might not have chosen originally in with it because they just speak to each other somehow.
Right. Yeah. I'm interested in this idea of pairing stories because so there are some magazines, so for example, American Core Data pairs artwork and text, and they were never supposed to go together, but they kind of create these associations. And it's quite sort of stark, it's quite obvious. Whereas reading Mnemotope, you do sometimes get a little feeling of association, but not more than that. It feels very subtle what you're doing.
I think it really is. It's funny because I think it's also one of my favorite processes, piecing the pieces together. For issue 8, which is coming out soon, we also did that. We had like printed all the papers on and laid them all on the ground. We're just like moving papers around, just like piecing them. But it is like, it's something that is very like, and we were talking about this last time, that it felt like very of an intuition, and it's like something that's also sometimes a bit hard because then we're not like, we feel it and we're like, oh, this somehow resonates with this, but it's like it becomes very intuitive, and then it becomes very much so like I think like that's kind of like our very subjective stamp on the magazine. And then like whether or not people like see it, that's like something that we still don't know. Like, some are more obvious than others, obviously, but yeah, I think like that's one piece where I feel like maybe like because we don't edit the magazine so much, like we really don't, like we leave the pieces as they are. We don't, unless they're really long pieces, we'll do a little bit of copy editing with like talking with the author, but otherwise we'll really leave everything, because the point is like there's no restrictions on like the grammar and the form. So like even if like the grammar is wrong, we leave it, it's fine, as long as you understand what the story is about, it's okay. So I feel like the only point where we have like a bit of an editorial footprint is when we piece these pieces up together, which doesn't happen so frequently in the magazine anymore either, because now we have a lot of longer pieces, so then like putting them both on spread doesn't happen as much. But yeah, so it is a very fun process, but it's a very subjective one.
Totally. And then, so you're beginning with this very open process where you say like, just send us your stories, doesn't matter who you are. your editing process is extremely minimal, so you try to leave as much as you can. And then you also randomize all of the stories, so you're not even controlling where something appears in the magazine. Why not?
I think it started like, especially when we started, we were very quite strong, like put these strong borders, like we wanted to be like all open, non-hierarchical, like very like this is just one line. And so we did it with the first issue, and then we kept going. And at the end, it's like it's actually and it makes sense with the magazine, I think, in some ways, just because like it would. Because the pieces are so varied, it would be very hard to find a way that I think makes sense. Like it would always, like I feel like almost any way would make sense, but because it's such a up and down and right and left, and it made sense for it to be randomized in that way. And it's always fun because like we always we'll like list out the spreads. We'll call them really random names from just associations by us. So the spread will be called like flower butter, things like that. And then we'll put in like a list generator, and then we have to remember what the spreads were that we called them. We're like, which one was flower butter again? Oh, it's going second. Okay, that one. And then it'll be. But every time I feel like I love the randomization the most. Like it always ends up being in an order that makes a lot of sense. There's definitely, it's a lot of intuition again that goes in it. Maybe even, letting go.
Yeah. I think, well, yeah, like Louis says, we were trying to avoid this idea of like the centerfold. Originally, we didn't want the piece that is the centerfold to be the biggest one, or to have, the first page be, I think that already introduces some kind of hierarchy. And so what was also really important for us was the ability to be surprised by the stories you find. And for us, that surprise continues, even like though we have edited the entire magazine and designed it and put it together, we still get to partake in that. Maybe it's just all a selfish thing, I don't know. But it encourages this, this sense of like, I think that the whole point of storytelling is surprise, or to evoke this kind of emotion quite suddenly in you, whatever it is. And so it felt natural somehow. I think it makes sense for us, even if we can't explain it very well.
It's interesting hearing you describe this as selfish, because, so I said at the start, I think this kind of upends a lot of what I think about as magazine making. Because I guess I think of magazine making as essentially being about control and reduction. So like you begin, like you commission stories, they come in, you edit them down to get rid of the things you don't like. Maybe you just kill a story because it's not doing the thing that you wanted. And like the whole thing is this like almost like fascistic, like kind of super control over the thing that you're making. Whereas you're turning that around completely and saying like, actually, we want to have the pleasure of being surprised by this magazine. Do you think like that's your experience of it? Do you think that the reader then experiences it differently as well?
Absolutely.
I
think Lilou and I experience it differently even. I think
for sure.
We also do a thing for the copy editing, like, or just to make sure that everything is kind of in place before it goes to print. We read the entire thing cover to cover aloud, just like alternating pieces. And even though we've read the pieces 100 times, by the time we're at that point, they shapeshift entirely, depending on whether Lilou's reading it or I'm reading it. It's also the first time usually we're hearing it aloud. And then at the launch, we have speakers come, or like contributors come often and read. And then it's different again. I think the nature of storytelling, especially non-standard literary storytelling, is that it shapeshifts based on the tone or based on the context, where you're reading it, when you're reading it. And so I don't think we've ever thought of it as being any different. I don't think Lilou and I often, we have very similar tastes in some ways, but when it comes to story, it's very different. And I think also the fact that there's two of us in it is helpful, because we know that if we're not seeing it in the same way, and we're, like you said, literally joined at the hip most of the time, there's no way that readers will experience it in the same way either, which is amazing. I think it's so interesting to then have discussions around the pieces we've read.
I'm always really surprised because obviously, like, we are human. There's always pieces in the magazine that we like less than others. Like, there's some that stand out a little bit more to us, like not drastic, I'm like not drastically, but a little bit. But it's always funny because at the launches, then I'll be talking with someone and like their favorite piece ever will be one that I was like very like, oh, it's fine, it's okay. But they'll be like, I saw so much of myself in this. And it's really, because I always feel this way also reading the magazine, right? There's a lot of pieces that really like hit home in a way that I'm just like, oh wow, I really feel myself in this. And then there's another piece that's like, oh, this is opening up a whole new world that I had no idea about, and all this like, and it's completely different for everyone, obviously, because they're all super subjective and everyone has their own experiences. But it's always really fun to like just compare. But even just in our circles of friends, like, because we obviously like they're so sick of us. We only talk about Mnemotope, and that's all we like shove into their faces. but they also feel so differently about all the pieces. So it's really it makes it so much more exciting, I think, and brings up so many fun conversations also.
So tell me, like, how long have you been doing this? When did you start Mnemotope?
2 years ago, almost
2
exactly.
years ago.
Yeah.
September 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a note at the start of this issue 7, that says you're now getting more submissions than ever before. Also, the type of submissions is changing. You're getting longer stuff. Like, how do you actually go about getting people to submit this?
Well, in the most basic way, we post an open call on our Instagram. But we also print out posters. For issue 7, we also had like a few different like campaigns where we made these like coasters for bars that just like kind of beer mats, that said like the best stories are told around the table, send us your story. And we also had like stickers around with like writing prompts, like, and these are like little things that obviously they don't have quite as big of a reach, but at least they're breaking out a bit more of the algorithm. And we also send out the open call to a lot of different libraries and reading groups and writing groups in different circles. I think a big thing when we started it was also because we came from a design background, that we really like the art and design bubbles are very bubbles, and it's really hard to like get out of those. And so we really wanted it to reach like beyond those walls basically, and to get people in that were just not just art and design people. But then Instagram also honestly does a big job with it as well. It goes
but also today
that.
I think like 22 or 23% of our contributors found us in bookstores or at book fairs.
True,
I forgot readers that. First. Yeah, that's a big one for us as well. And then word of mouth. Because there's something, I mean, so many of the people who are featured in Mnemotope, it's their first time being published. And so they tell their parents or their friends or their siblings or even their grandparents. And that also means that like we've had a father and son published in the same issue. And it allows us also, that very organic reach allows us as well to be outside of these algorithms. And it becomes such a more fascinating place when you have all of these different voices from different walks of life who would never really have engaged with us otherwise, like colliding in the magazine. I think, it's a huge focus of ours to get outside of just the algorithm.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so you mentioned the events that you have. So I guess, everyone has a launch party. So you have your launches, but then you're doing other stuff as well. And like, is this all in service of trying to get this other type of contributor to the magazine?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's been a big year of like trying to really expand the type of events that we do. So we always had launches with every issue, and those are fantastic. They're so fun. Like, they're really a great time. But we also started doing storytelling supper clubs. So we'll gather in my apartment and make a really big meal, and then and like invite people in. But for the supper clubs, that we do have a theme, which is a very loose theme always, but then it's just like inviting people to like tell their stories around the dinner, and that works really, really well. We've done 2, we're working on a 3rd one now, and it's just a perfect format for it. It always turns out really, really lovely. And then we're gonna also, now we have a new studio space actually. I'm in it, but we haven't unboxed our boxes. So it's still a bit of a settling in, but also we're hoping to host more like reading and writing circles for just people that want to spend more time reading or writing, but just like it's just hard to find that time, and to have just like that those limits around you can be a bit easier. So to kind of open up that side as well.
We also do workshops with cultural institutions a lot, and then that's more around storytelling generally. And then we're hosting our very first festival next year, the Roundstone Storytelling Festival in the west of Ireland. It's 3 days long, which is going to be wonderful. But yeah, our whole mission for our lives is just to gather people around storytelling on and off the page. And so off the page is really something we're pushing at the moment as well.
Amazing, yeah. And that I read as well, so like people don't even have to write something down to get a story. Like they can send you a voice note.
Yeah. It doesn't actually happen that often, but it has happened, and it's really great. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds extremely lazy to me. Just like send you a voice note. But so, and actually, when I read that, I was interested because I guess that's then sort of kind of changing what the thing is. So like if someone sends like a voice note, there's a degree of that being like casual and I don't know, maybe transient. Whereas once you transcribe that and then you print it in a magazine, you suddenly make it like permanent and it's there forever. Do you like, I guess, is that a thing that you deal with at all, or you're just interested in the story so it doesn't matter?
It definitely is something No, go for it, Lilou.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I think the permanence of it is less something we think about, but more the distance it travels. And so I think what we also find really interesting is publishing work that is written in non-standard English, or that's more colloquial, because then you read it in a different voice in your head. And so with voice memos, there is this degree of casualness or a different tone that you don't usually get. So I think we're more interested in the form of it than we are in the permanence of it. What do you think?
No, I agree. I was going to say something a bit similar, but a lot less eloquent. But no, but I think it's also, we've also are trying to find ways to have, like as Réiltín was saying, like have these pieces travel further away. So also on like our newsletter, we'll sometimes publish like one story from Mnemotope to just like kind of like give a glimpse into it, and so that story can go a bit further. But we're also doing a bit more like video pieces where the audio piece, the audio of the piece is being read aloud, and it's like it's not like crazy videos, it's very still videos, which is another way to like get to hear that story or like consume that story in a way that can be more accessible, just depending on like what access is. Obviously access is different depending on where you are, but yeah, to bring those stories further away. So I feel like even with the audio pieces, like now we've also are focusing also a lot with the audio, and so but we are also making it permanent in a video. I mean, I guess as long as permanent is online, it will all crash down probably at some point, but but for that time anyways.
I really enjoyed the video stuff that I saw. Like so there's one, I think it was like a playground maybe, and it was just like a locked off camera, like filming this, and then the trees are swaying a little bit in the wind, but it means that it almost sort of gives you permission to just sort of like switch off and listen to the story for a bit, which I thought was really clever.
No, I think it's also, again, something we kind of do because we wanted. It's really a lot of what happens with the press, but we wanted, it's in the voice of the author always. It's always the contributor's voice reading the pieces, and having, permission to like either switch off or just like, it still feels like you're consuming media content, but it is somewhere between a podcast and a short form content. It's something that we wanted in middle term.
Yeah. No, it just feels like really considered and like very beautifully done. And then that makes me think about the magazine as well. So you have this quite kind of stark black and white design. Did I read that just won an award for the design?
Yeah. Um, not to be multiple actually, but that sounds bad. But yeah, we did. Yeah, which is very exciting and surprising. I didn't even know awards existed until Réiltín was like, "We need to apply to awards." I was like, "Why?"
That's not
So
true. We
come on,
got an
which ones
award
did you win?
before. We won
Yeah, that's
the
true.
Renaissance Award, which is based in the Netherlands. We got an honorable mention in the International Design Awards. We won a European Design Award, and we won, what's the other one we knew? Oh, a DNA Paris Design Award, which is really,
Yeah,
again, kind of
in editorial,
not
which
what
was
we
nice.
expected at all. I know everyone's always like, oh, we didn't expect to win, but we really, like, Lilou and I come from a design background but have never studied graphic design. So it was really funny because for the European Design Awards, we went to like this conference. We went to, this conference of graphic designers, and people would be looking at the magazine and be like, oh, the margins are so daring. And we were like, oh, I wasn't sure how much you were meant to read. I didn't know that was an issue.
Yeah, and then there would be like these big graphic designers that would give this like talks about their practice and their process, and they're like, and one time I was on InDesign and just decided to only do columns and no grids, and I was like, we barely have 2 columns in this magazine. But here we are.
Love it. You're freaking out the design community with your design. Okay, good. So you've got issue 8 is coming out very soon, I think.
Yeah.
When does that come out?
Hopefully beginning of October. October 10th is our shoot date at the moment.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. And are there going to be any big changes for that compared to issue 7? Because I gather you've been through some pretty big changes in making issue 7. What's happening next?
So basically the format we changed with issue 7. So before that we printed on A5 with all like recycled paper. It's always recycled paper. It's always been from the start, but it was staple bound. It was very, very simple. But then the issue with that is that we could only include like a certain amount of pages, especially because we actually were really into our staple bind had this like edge to it, so it still had like a square spine
Profile.
and so and so we couldn't exceed a certain amount of pages, which actually started becoming really, really hard with the amount of submissions we got, which is why we changed the format for issue 7, which is now glue bound, so meaning that we can like really expand it as much as we want. So issue 8 is not changing in terms of like the pure format of it, but it is bigger. It has 50 more pages in it.
Wow, 50 more. So and because I'm looking at this is what 120 odd.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, we received like more than 600 submissions for issue 8. So it was just and even like I think that was like the first time where we really ended like the first draft of the magazine. We're like, wow, there's a lot of pieces that actually we still really, really liked and just genuinely couldn't manage to put it in, just in terms of like going back to what we were saying earlier, like just themes repeating themselves too often or things of the sorts. But yeah, it's really we did keep adding pages to this file. We were just like, we have to one day we'll be better at saying no, this is a straight line, but we're not really not so good with that.
So is there going to come a point then where you say, okay, the magazine is now this size, this is the limit, or are you happy for it to just keep on growing as interest grows?
No, we're gonna have to. We can't afford to print anything much longer than we're doing. I think we are going to have a limit, which is probably close to what we're at with issue 8, I would imagine. But I think we're never going to set like this is that's the only page count we're going to do. It's always going to fluctuate a little bit, but I don't think we can go much longer than we've done.
If we have more money at some point, I would be like, sure, let's keep going. Let's expand it.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. Just get some more money. That's fine. Everyone's got loads of money, right?
Easy.
Yeah. Well, look, I love what you're doing, and thank you very much for sending it over to me in the first place, and for making such a totally fascinating magazine. It's an amazing thing to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. It's always so fun to talk about our process. I'm always just like, oh, wow, we do things weird, but it works out.
So true.
Excellent.